We've all heard of LEGO, the classic building blocks that have incredibly iconic IPs attached to it. From Marvel to massive Nintendo sets to whatever this is. Without a doubt, you've played with LEGO, and have even stumbled across a Gamer 61. So today we're gonna look at every LEGO game that was made for the Nintendo Switch. All 15. Yeah, there's 15 LEGO games on the Nintendo Switch. How? We'll be going through them in order of release on Switch, and as we play through them, we're gonna go over the pros and the cons of these Switch versions, and just my overall enjoyment of the games themselves. I'm also going to tell you some interesting lore and facts that are unique to the Switch versions, and I almost guarantee that there's a game here that you weren't expecting or you completely forgot about. We're going to rate these based on 3 things: overall game, the optimization, and the IP. The IP will affect the scores of these games on my tier list, because I might not like one franchise over the other. So just remember that my overall opinion of these games is my opinion, and you might have a different one than me. Let's start with the first LEGO game released on Switch, LEGO City Undercover, a classic GTA for kids, you could say. This game was first released on March 18th, 2013, exclusively on the Wii U, and was even in the Nintendo Selects catalog. Having the game exclusively on Wii U gave this title very unique gameplay features. I remember the Wii U version had this gyro feature where you'd look around for bad guys. Just certain things like that were made for the Wii U gamepad. But with the flop of the Wii U, the developers wanted to improve and port this to the better consoles. And of course that includes Switch. So, 4 years later, this game got a new version and was finally released on PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Jumping in, you can already tell this looks a lot better than the Wii U. The resolution is higher, and oh boy, the load times are a little better. Still long, but not as long. I remember when I originally played the game on Wii U, I would get so sick and tired of these load times. Right away, you can already tell. This looks pretty darn good. It looks a little weird with the glitchy shading and the facial features. With fully voice-acted characters and an interesting plot, I'm remembering why I liked this game so much on the Wii U. After revisiting the game on Switch, there were a few underlying issues with this port, mainly with the performance, with some pretty noticeable frame dips, especially when entering the city, or when something big happens. Most of the time in story mode, it wasn't a huge issue for me, but it's definitely noticeable. From an intriguing story mode, to chase scenes, and a crazy amount of cosmetics and replay value, you won't be disappointed with this game. It's also cool to see Mario Easter eggs in a LEGO game, which were added because once again, it was a Wii U exclusive originally. Now I don't want my nostalgia to get ahead of me. It's a fantastic game, but the performance is kinda giving it a step back, so we're gonna go with an A on this one. We're starting strong. Next, LEGO Worlds, one of the lesser known LEGO games. The Minecraft wannabe. I remember being so excited about this game when it was in early access. I remember watching YouTubers play it and having fun. That was back 2015, and I could never play it because I wasn't an epic PC gamer, and that's the only way you could play it in early access. I was also 13 and had no money. So when it finally came out on September 5th, 2017, you better believe I was getting it on Switch. And then I never played it. I booted it up probably once or twice, trying really hard to get into it. I even remember getting my brother to buy it so we could play together, because multiplayer adds so much fun to these LEGO games. So let's finally jump back in and revisit it. Maybe this time I'll get hooked. You start off by Fortniting onto the map. After you crash land, you are given a tool called the Discovery tool. Using this tool, you're tasked to explore the island and scan things. After scanning certain objects, you can then place, duplicate, and delete what you've spawned in, all in hopes of becoming a Master Builder! Whatever that means. Using the studs you collect, you can buy the items you discover and place them around. The main objective of the story mode is that you're going around and completing these tasks to get enough golden bricks to progress to the next world. Throughout the game, you'll be unlocking new tools, from changing terrain to copying and pasting builds. This game is a lot better now than when I had originally played it 6 years ago. It's easier to understand now that I'm 6 years older than I was. Massive depth for brain development. I enjoyed unlocking vehicles and tools. It's kind of like you're completing an open world LEGO Pokédex for objects and creatures that you have to pay for. This game is approximately 9 hours of doing quests, using your tools, and discovering new creatures. These discoveries can be brought into other worlds too. Now the overall performance on Switch is probably its biggest drawback, as it feels very choppy. This is most likely due to the frame rate being 30, which is half of the other consoles being at 60. There's also no use of motion blur like we saw in Undercover, which helped mask the choppiness a touch. I also didn't love how the camera felt. I got used to it after a while, but I think the somewhat complicated controls and the janky frame rate made it seem sluggish at times. But still, the game is a perfect match for the Switch, mindlessly roaming around a randomly generated area and doing tasks. As far as LEGO games go, this is going to be a B for me. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I was going to. Now we have LEGO Ninjago, the movie, the video game. A game based on a movie, based on a toy. As much as I loved LEGO back in the day, I never got into Ninjago. I don't know why, but I didn't. Which means that I never watched the movie. Which means I'm about to play a game I know nothing about a movie I've never watched. Alright, let's do it. Aside from the incredibly low frame rate cutscene, the game feels a lot more like the traditional LEGO games. Except here, we get some great combat. So far, this is the best combat I've seen in a LEGO game. We've only played 2, but still. Very quick and easy to understand. Through the game, you'll be able to collect these tokens, which can enhance your powers and overall gameplay experience too. You can also unlock cosmetics for each character, as well as collectibles like golden bricks. From a LEGO IP I never really cared about, I was surprised how much I enjoyed this game. I never finished it, but the first 2 hours really got me hooked and especially reminded me of the local co-op features most LEGO games have that aren't in LEGO City and LEGO Worlds. Since I never watched the movie, I'm not sure if it's a complete shot-for-shot remake of the movie in LEGO form, but I can imagine it's a similar story because I think they took parts of the movie for the cutscenes. Anyway, gameplay-wise, I was happily impressed. Now the performance is another thing. It didn't run great on Switch. Although the frame rate is capped at 30 frames per second, the frame rate in this game was all over the place, especially with things exploding and the sky segments when the ninjas are in their mechs. It was quite the lag fest. And it would probably be even worse with local split screen. Now all that to say, it never crashed and it did power through, but the Switch is definitely working hard. Aside from the performance, the overall resolution, shading, and lighting is downgraded as well. But that's not a massive deal compared to the frame rate. With this game being pretty cheap nowadays and a surprisingly intriguing upgrade tree and gameplay mechanics like combat, I could definitely finish this game without dreading it. And I actually enjoyed myself, even without being a fan of Ninjago or watching the movie that this game is based on. So I gotta give this an A. If you actually like this franchise, I'm sure you'd have a great time with it. Finally, a franchise I know about! LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 is next on the list. Wait, LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2? I thought the first one was on Switch. Oh, it is! But it came out after this one did. We'll get back to that one later because LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 was released on Switch before the first one was. So we gotta play 2 first. Surprisingly, I never actually played this game. I've had it on my shelf for over a year because I got it for like $12 at Walmart on a clearance sale. This game starts with Guardians of the Galaxy. Right away, this is a more classic LEGO game, with the camera being locked as you run and fly your way through the main campaign. Well, most of the time the camera's locked. Sometimes there's sections where the camera's directly behind you in free roam mode, kind of like LEGO City Undercover. I prefer the free roam, but it's fine either way. It felt very similar to other LEGO games. I had button mash enemies and do pretty basic puzzles. The combat is more complex than other LEGO games we've played, except for LEGO Ninjago. Each character has special abilities, like throwing their weapons, shooting lasers, or changing size and shape. This makes each figure fun and unique. And while it was interesting to see how a lot of them played, I mainly stuck with the characters I knew, which brings me to my next point. I don't know who a lot of these superheroes are. Like, I know most of them, but there are some I just don't recognize. Because of this, I found it was a little difficult to understand the whole plot. The story just seemed very random. It ties itself together in some spots, but at the beginning, I didn't understand what was happening, and I'm 21 years old, so. Overall, the gameplay was just a polished version of the iconic LEGO games. The animation was more quirky, and the fighting was a lot faster, and the overall graphics stood out. Now, the graphics are definitely better than some past titles, but you can clearly tell the resolution is lower than other versions would be. You can definitely see this in handheld mode. It has very pixelated, jaggy edges. It looks 720p docked and at most 580p handheld. But that's just what I'm eyeballing. Probably the biggest issue with this game on Switch is the performance! Who could have guessed? Just like what we saw with Ninjago and LEGO City, this game was not optimized for combat or heavy action sequences. It made the game sluggishly hitch as you played through. This was obvious in most cutscenes and boss fights, which is something you'll encounter very often in the story mode. The frame rate is also capped at an expected 30 frames per second. This game was filled with memorable moments from collecting all characters, putting in cheat codes, and roaming the city. Although I enjoyed it more than some other games, I gotta throw it in B, mainly because the overall resolution and performance on the Switch version could have been a little better. Sticking with Disney, next we have The Incredibles. This is probably my most anticipated LEGO game I haven't played yet. The Incredibles is an iconic Pixar movie that had its sequel released the same year as this game, most likely capitalizing on the movie's success to sell a new game. But how is it on Switch? Starting the game up, you play as the Incredibles at the beginning of the second movie, where they're on a massive drill thing trying to stop it from ruining the city even more. It's a great action scene to start a game, and it shows how great some of these levels can look. And just this opening segment, you're tasked with playing as the Incredible family and work together to complete puzzles and defeat enemies. Like most of these LEGO games, this would be a great co-op experience. Speaking of which, I found some segments in this game were definitely designed for multiplayer. For example, there was a part where Mrs. Incredible was on a bike, and in single player I had to swap between the bike and this shooting machine thing to kill enemies. If 2 people were playing, one of them would be shooting and one of them would be controlling the bike. In my case, because I was playing single player, I had to swap between both and miss out on the driving or the killing animals, which is fine, but it proves that TT makes these games with multiplayer in mind. This one once again follows the safe and classic LEGO game formula, just based off the Incredible movies, which I've actually watched. I remember watching the first Incredibles movie over and over again, and the second one I watched a few times. So it's interesting to see how they've changed the LEGO game experience to work around these storylines. Since this is based on a movie that I've actually watched, I can compare the movie and the game, as I'm sure was intended. Playing this and seeing how they've added certain levels and expanded on the elements from the movie in the LEGO form is pretty interesting. It would be a little confusing if you didn't watch the movies. Chances are, if you're playing this, you probably watched the movie, and then that doesn't matter. So whatever. The gameplay style itself is pretty decent. You have a similar button spamming combat that we've come to expect with most LEGO games, while also including some newer combat mechanics like combos and super build-up attacks. Just like Ninjago, there are certain button combos as well. And even though that's great, it still ended up feeling pretty repetitive. And of course, the performance and graphics. Like some of the past LEGO games, optimizations for Switch was not made here. This game chugs in high combat and action areas, or even just driving a vehicle. The overall resolution has taken a hit from other console versions, as we can expect, and the textures and depth of the game look really flat in certain areas. There's fewer reflections and there's even a weird fog thing on the Switch version, so the asset popping isn't as noticeable. And to tie it all together, the frame rate is capped at 30 frames per second, but feels like it very rarely hits that. There's also some minor tweaks that I noticed that could be different on all versions, with some cutscenes seeming quiet after gameplay, or certain intense gameplay segments with extremely low music, like with the bike chase scene. The music should be louder with the sound effects, but it sounds like just the bike is going unless you listen extremely close. And I looked in the audio settings, everything is at default.
The upcoming road's closed for maintenance. Afraid that's as much help as we can get.
Overall, this game is great if you like Incredibles. It's a safe open world hub experience with a love plot Incredibles fans will enjoy. But on Switch, it's going in B. It was good, but the optimization on Switch was lacking and lazy. Next is another superhero game. Well, villain game. This is LEGO DC Supervillains, which came out October 16th, 2018. I haven't played this one yet, but that's probably because I'm not a huge DC fan. Unlike Pixar or Marvel, the DC franchise never really piqued my interest. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it wasn't for me. So just like LEGO Ninjago, I'm diving in for the first time on a franchise I'm impartial to. My first impression is that it looked great. The dark tones in the story are intriguing right off the bat. Man. And this is a unique one, with the story allowing you to be the villains instead of the heroes. It's an interesting twist and an original story that really makes you want to play as these villains. I don't have anything fantastic to say about these characters, but it's your classic LEGO game once again. This feels very similar to The Incredibles, almost identical gameplay all around, except here I think the combat is a little tighter. Like we're used to, each character has their own abilities, and you can use them to progress through the levels. I think you pretty much get it at this point. I think the biggest improvement here compared to some previous titles is the performance is a lot more reliable than past games. The frame rate does act up a little, but it's nowhere near as bad as some other games. It's mainly during the in-game rendered cutscenes and the heavy action. Otherwise, the frame rate stays at a close 30 frames per second like we're used to by now. But this is a great Switch port. Because I'm not really interested in the franchise, I can't say I played through the entire game. But with a few hours under my belt, I can put this in a safe B. Next is LEGO Harry Potter Collection. Hot take alert! My opinion is coming. Here comes my opinion. I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan. I've never loved the whole magical spell stuff, which brings me to another point. Chances are, if there's a LEGO IP I don't like, I'm not gonna like that game as much as some other games. I'm just not as invested in it as I would be with an IP I'm a fan of. As we've learned with other movie-based games like Incredibles or Star Wars, because I haven't watched the Harry Pokémon movies, chances are I might get a little stumped on the plot. And with Harry Potter specifically, I can imagine it could get a little complicated. Anyways, just keep that in mind as I play this. LEGO Harry Potter Collection released October 30th, 2018 on Switch, just 2 weeks after LEGO Supervillains. They were on the grind, but these games were actually made back in 2010 and 2011, which means that these are the oldest LEGO games ported to the Nintendo Switch. I hope they won't feel too dated. They did. They felt dated. Whoa! Our first LEGO title so far that has 60 frames per second. Wowie zowie! This is probably because this game was from the early 2010s. You didn't need powerful hardware to run this game, which is why we see smooth frame rates and solid shadows. Other than that, it's just a crisp version of the game, which is great if you like these titles. You can finally play these games in a high resolution and bring it on the go with your Switch. Now the performance isn't all there. Years 1 through 4 looked and ran pretty great for the most part, but for some reason, year 5 through 7 ran a little more jittery. I'm not really sure why. It looks a lot more graphically advanced in the first section, but for some reason, there's just an odd jitter to the camera. Aside from that, it's fine. It feels dated. It's a game from 2010, of course it's gonna feel dated. From the sound effects to the Wii era animation, it's just an older game. And then like every new LEGO game we've played, there's no voice acting. Back in the day, that's how these LEGO games were. The figures just grunted. There's also no combat. Well, not like we've seen. Instead of actually fighting, characters use their wands and blast things, or they'll roll. I mean, I guess that works. This is when LEGO games weren't too focused on the whole combat thing. So even though I'm not a massive fan of this game or franchise, I absolutely see the appeal to fans of this game. This is a definitive way to play. All that being said, it is an older game and you can tell, especially coming from the other LEGO games I had just played. Although it has aged well, it's still aged. And with me not being a massive fan and the second game feeling really jittery, I'm personally throwing this into C. Next, here is the LEGO Movie 2 video game. Yet again another game based on a movie based on a toy. I distinctly remember buying the first game on Wii U. I remember liking it, but also remembering it wasn't my favorite. And now this one. First of all, I didn't even know they made a sequel to this movie until now. What the? I'm gonna watch this movie as soon as this video's done. Anyways, I'm gonna be playing the game before I even watch the second movie. Oh, and there's downloadable content, free Galactic Adventures character, and level pack. Right off the bat, the opening load times took forever. That is excruciatingly long. Getting into the actual game, you can tell the graphics are looking really flat, especially after they show you the tutorial that was clearly pre-recorded from a more powerful device. The glossy look of the LEGO bricks looks more matte, and the shadows and resolution are also decreased. Also, the overall UI and text does not look great. It's giving me anime game vibes. While collecting a character or talking to someone, the audio also sounds extremely compressed while in game. I must say, this game feels a lot like actual moving LEGO. Like the characters don't bend in an unrealistic way. They're more stiff, but in a good way. There's also these builds that you have to complete. These are kind of just there. You have to go through level and break LEGO and then use the blueprints to build this LEGO. After playing for a while, I started getting used to putting down these LEGO builds and figuring out what build goes where. But it's usually pretty easy and it's kind of repetitive. I think the most fun in this game is the bigger action scenes, like this massive boss fight or when things are collapsing and you have to escape this stage. It's easy, but it's more enjoyable than building things. This game's going in to C, but if I watched the movie, I'd probably make it go higher. If you played it, tell me what you think. Next we have LEGO Jurassic World. Original release for other consoles back in 2015, but eventually found its way onto the Switch later in 2019. This was a dream game for me when I was younger. I love the Jurassic movies and I had just seen the new Jurassic World movie in theaters, and I genuinely considered it to be one of my favorite movies of all time. I distinctly remember watching countless hours of videos on this game and eventually going to GameStop with my dad to buy it. And I freaking loved this box art. I would literally just stare at it. And compared to some other LEGO box arts, this is sweet and intense. So when I got home and cranked this in, I probably only played it for 2 hours. I got bored of it and traded it in pretty soon after I got it, back in my GameStop trading days. Unfortunately, this game didn't grab me like I wanted it to back in the day, and I'm not really sure why. I think I was feeling just a little too old for LEGO games at this point. I mean, I was almost 13, what do you expect? Anyways, let's jump back into this game and see if I can dig up the love that I wanted for this game on the Switch. This is a collection of all Jurassic Park movies and the first Jurassic World movie, as the last two Jurassic World movies had not come out yet. I have to say, this game looks great compared to some other LEGO games. I had a lot of fun going through these thrilling stories in LEGO form. Obviously, it got toned down for a LEGO kids-friendly kind of vibe, but they all do. Because this is an older game, it ran pretty good on the Nintendo Switch. The resolution is crisp and the frame rate is locked at 30, with almost no slowdown. And the use of motion blur in this title makes this game feel even more smooth. This really is a great option for those who haven't played it. This game is very similar to most LEGO games. You can tell the formula was being repeated here. Do puzzles in co-op, break items, build LEGO, and so on. LEGO Jurassic World has a lot of cool features like making your own hybrid dinosaurs and the whole dinosaur thing in general. It's just a lot of fun and it's probably one of my favorites. And after revisiting this game on the Switch, I was reminded this game is great, and it probably just didn't hit me at a good time back in my 13-year-old days. But I could literally sit through this whole thing. I enjoyed every bit of it. But again, I love the franchise, so of course it scored high with me. I think the weirdest thing is that they're using voice clips straight from the movies, which sound kind of bad. I think it's mainly because they're trying to remove background noise from the clips and they had to process it out, and they've also probably compressed the voice clips to manage to fit it on a cartridge and play the game at all.
You'll have to get used to Dr. Malcolm.
But overall, I'm giving this a C! Or an S, I meant an S. Giving this an S. In June 2021, we got the release of LEGO Builder's Journey. This originally came out on PC in 2019, and it's a very unique game. It's completely different than the traditional minifigure-based games. In this title, you follow a little LEGO figure, and you're tasked to get them from point A to point B using the given LEGO bricks. This is a very unique concept for a LEGO game, but fits perfectly. It's a great distraction from the many past LEGO games that are starting to feel a tad repetitive. There's definitely some hidden lore, which is very interesting. If you dig a little deeper, it might seem a little dark than you'd initially expect from a LEGO title. And this game looks and runs amazing. The resolution is 1080p and the game runs smooth at 60 frames per second. There's also some great textures, physics, and lighting effects added. But it also doesn't look anywhere close to the extremely impressive high-end PC and current-gen consoles. Just look at that! The ray tracing, oh, The controls are where it can get a little tricky. They aren't bad, but they can be a little finicky, just like when I actually build Lego. This game was made with a mouse in mind. Generally, you move the cursor and put the blocks down using that, but here, that's not the case. On the Switch, you need to select the highlighted blocks and move them with your analog stick or D-pad. This works great in most cases, but sometimes it wouldn't highlight to the brick you wanted to select the first time, or when you're placing bricks down. It might take a little extra time to find the stud you wanted to place it on. This was especially challenging when there was fast-paced block placements that needed to be performed, like with the sinking sand. You needed to quickly move the blocks for the Lego person to jump on to get to the other side, but the Switch's controls don't work good in these situations, and I'd find myself having to figure a more elegant way to cross this mud puddle. It can also be a little confusing when placing the bricks. Here you only press the A button to pick up, rotate, and when holding, it places the bricks. I think there should have been a dedicated button for all of these, not just one button. It made me a little scrambled sometimes, but don't fear, because if you're not a fan of buttons, there is touchscreen support, and it works really well. You could easily play the whole title just using touchscreen. Now, with that being said, you can also use the touchscreen on your Apple devices, because it's available on iPhone and iPad. If you have an Apple Arcade subscription, you can play it through there. The iPhone version obviously looks pretty similar graphics-wise, and it can also be played with your phone in vertical. Overall, this is a great mobile-feeling puzzle game that's available on the Nintendo Switch. And it's great to see the different styles of video games LEGO can achieve. For me, this game is getting in the B tier. Even though it looks and ran wonderfully, it's not my favorite gameplay type, but it's a great way to shut your brain off and relax. And now we have LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 1. Yes, this came out on the Switch after LEGO Marvel Super Hero 2. This dropped on October 5th, 2021 on Switch, but originally dropped October 22nd, 2013. And you better believe I got it in the launch week on Wii U. I really enjoyed this game, and I played the heck out of it. Roaming the city, just flying around, and of course the story mode was great. As opposed to the LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2, this game had a wide variety of crossover characters, but the story sticks to a close-knit core group of characters that I knew from the movies. This game is closely tied to the Avengers movies, which were really popular back then. On the Switch, it's pretty much more of the same. They straight up ported the Wii U version, and that's all they needed to do. This holds up incredibly well, even next to the sequel, and I actually like it better. It was fresh back when it came out. This was the first Marvel game. It felt like pure passion went into this, from massive characters to little hidden details only super fans would know about. The overall gameplay style might seem a little more stale compared to some of the newer titles, but I thought the combat held up surprisingly well. Just like most LEGO games, it has you spamming the same buttons over and over, and each character has their own unique abilities, and there's a multitude of local co-op puzzles. These games are designed around these puzzles. Some of the best memories I have of this game is when I'd play with my brother and try to collect all the minifigures. The overall graphics and performance is nothing to scoff at either. Because this is an older game, it runs perfectly. The image is sharp at the Switch's native resolution, and the performance is fantastic with a solid 30 frames per second with no choppiness whatsoever. Though I will admit the story can get a little slow sometimes, but that could be because I've been playing only LEGO games for the past few days for this video. This is going in S. I might be a little biased, but this is my tier list. Next we have LEGO Star Wars Skywalker Saga. Oh boy, this brings me back to the earlier YouTube days. Back when I started to take YouTube seriously, I did a review on this game. You can check it out if you want. You shouldn't, but you can. This game is a love letter to Star Wars fans. They've recreated all 9 movies in LEGO form, which means they've also recreated classic original LEGO Star Wars games too. Everything was rebuilt from the ground up, and this game takes a very refreshing turn. Instead of a locked camera showing the stage, this game is from a third-person angle the entire time. The camera is always behind you, similar to The Last of Us or Fortnite. We've seen this camera in some LEGO games already, but it's generally not the whole time like this. This game also has a more defined combat system as well, and varies depending on which character you play as. I think the only thing holding the Switch version back is the optimization. The resolution is clearly lower, and the frame rate is at a locked 30 frames per second most of the time, with some occasional dips. But if you compare it to some other versions, you can see a distinct lack of textures, lighting effects, and overall graphics. This is a great game that you'll want to play at a higher graphical fidelity because it looks so good. The Switch version does the trick if it's your only option, and you'll have a great gameplay experience. The Switch version does the trick if it's your only way to play. Although this game is a lot of fun, I played a majority of it hoping I could see the enhanced graphics on the current gen consoles, as those versions get an astounding 4K at 60 frames per second, with fantastic graphical features. The gameplay was fun and I enjoyed it the whole time, but I'm gonna give it a B because there's a massive difference graphically with other versions and the overall performance. LEGO Brawls. Hooey boy. This is a LEGO fighting game made by Bandai Namco, the same people who made Smash Bros. Huh? This game originally released back in 2019 on Apple Arcade, which means this started as a mobile game and morphed its way onto consoles in September 2022. So as a fan of fighting games like Smash Bros or Street Fighter 6, it'd be interesting to see where they take this. Let's hope it's not a punch in the face. Oh gosh. Oh no, please, oh dear. I'm just hopping on and yikes! It does not look graphically pleasing. The game's overall graphics are simply bland and boring. Thankfully, this at least helps the game run at 60 frames per second, which is great, until it chugs during intense battles. The character animations also seem a tad jittery, especially during jumping. It's not smooth like this, like mine. But LEGO Brawls does do something right, like the amount of fun crossovers it has, like LEGO Ninjago and Jurassic World. This game also has tons of unlockables, like weapons, skins, and emotes, but that's about it. There's a plethora of flaws this game has. Allied with the horrible graphics and frame rate issues I mentioned, there's outrageously bad audio mixing. The music is so quiet and the sound effects are so loud. And also I'm playing offline, but it's pretending to be online still by filling up the lobby. Why not just put me in the game instead of me pretending to be in a lobby waiting for people that don't even exist? I don't understand. And the fighting in general isn't that great. It's very repetitive. There are different fighting styles, items, and special abilities, but again, it just feels so repetitive. I do like the mix of match types like capture the flag and free-for-all, but not for that long. So I don't know if my copy was defective. This game just isn't worth it for me and was not worth the value, especially when it first came out. This boy is going into the D tier. Whew. Next we have LEGO Bricktales. This is another LEGO spin-off building game. This game has you travel around and build things like bridges, fuses, pipes, and more. This is pretty much a glorified LEGO building simulator with tasks. The main issue with me is that I'm not really good at building LEGO creatively. And I don't know, it wasn't that much fun for me. You're pretty much just going around and building things to solve a problem. And eventually, I got to a level I just couldn't figure out. Call me a dummy, because I got frustrated and I just kind of quit. What didn't help was the terrible controls. I couldn't get used to it even after playing for 45 minutes. It just wasn't working for me. I found it difficult to change the way the LEGO piece was moving. Is it gonna go vertical or is it gonna go horizontal? I really just didn't have fun with this game. I see some appeal, I get it, just not for me. The overall performance is great and I think the hub world looks fantastic on Switch. There's good resolution, frame rate, textures, and the lighting is all there. But for me, this puppy's going into C. And finally, now we have LEGO 2K Drive. Once again, another crazy idea made into a LEGO game. This is essentially a LEGO version of Forza, Hydro Thunder, and Riders Republic, all crammed together. And it's fantastic. The gameplay mechanics are great. The feel of drifting in the LEGO cars is unlike most other driving games. It's got the LEGO charm combined with these driving simulators. There's some really intriguing gameplay loops too, like the story mode, the time trials, online play, side missions, and more. You will not get bored fast with this one. But as expected, the biggest issue with the Switch version is the graphics and performance. Mainly the graphics. The resolution seems to run at 720p dock and 480p handheld, and can change often using dynamic resolution to keep the performance stable. There's also a decent amount of dynamic shadows. They aren't as clear as current gen consoles, but it's nice to see them here. It's mostly in the lighting effects, textures, and particles you'll see a massive difference. The water specifically looks completely different next to the more powerful PS5. But like most of these games, the biggest difference is the frame rate, with this being at 30 frames per second as opposed to the current gen consoles being at 60 frames per second. And the frame rate does seem to chug pretty often, and especially in local split screen. All that to say, there are obviously some technical limitations to the Switch version, but there's no denying this is a great way to experience it in handheld. I would give this an S, but with the dumb amount of microtransactions and the overall performance, I'm throwing it an A. And that's the latest official LEGO release we got on the Switch. But of course, there's one more game that I wanted to mention that I'm sure you're aware of, and it has completely transformed LEGO games as we know it. And that's LEGO Fortnite. Man, I can't go video without mentioning Fortnite. This is crazy. And now I know what you're thinking. Technically, it's not a LEGO game, it's LEGO and Fortnite. Even though that's technically true, this LEGO game does a lot more than what you might expect. Also, I made a community post poll, and a majority of you say that it is its own game. So although it is in Fortnite, I would consider it to be another game. Anyways, let's play. LEGO Fortnite is a randomly generated open world survival game that lets you explore, fight enemies, and craft structures, weapons, and tools. With these tools, you can collect resources to help build your village. Upgrading your village allows you to gather NPC villagers and have them do tasks for you like collecting materials or traveling alongside you to fight enemies. This game encourages so much exploration. With this seemingly endless world, you can discover enemies, have livestock, and gather treasure. It's like Minecraft, but with LEGO, and inside of Fortnite. Never thought I'd be saying that. In LEGO Fortnite, you can choose to play in either survival or creative creative. I played mostly survival, and I spent so many hours in this game. I just couldn't stop. It's a survival game that's done really well. There are a few things I found a little difficult at first, like building. It just didn't feel that easy, and it takes a little while to get used to, especially if you're not using a pre-built blueprint, and I think it's especially hard on controllers. That being said, it didn't stop me and my friends from building a massive collaborative village. Co-op is a fantastic feature in this game mode. You can play with up to 8 people at a time on one world. Exploring with your friends takes me back to the classic Minecraft days. Oh, and unlike Minecraft, your friends can join your game server even while the server owner isn't online. This is done by granting players keys. They can then join the server at any time for free. After exploring, you can come back to your home and use the resources you found from caves and other biomes to build and create more weapons and items. The catalog of weapons is rather slim at the early stages of this game, but it opens up more as you progress your village. You still have your basic sword, shield, and crossbows though. This is a little difficult to compare to the other LEGO games because it's a complete departure from the LEGO games we've come to expect. After only playing this innovative minifigure based game for a couple of days, this is one I want to keep playing. The gameplay loops are extremely fun, and I find myself wanting to keep exploring and discovering new items and recipes for my village. And the fact it's so accessible with my friends is fantastic. May I remind you, this is a free game, which makes it the only free LEGO game out of all of these LEGO games on Switch. That alone is a massive deal. Literally anyone can play it as long as they have something to play it on, whether that's PC, Switch, PS5, or Xbox. The Switch version graphically is obviously going to be downgraded next to the other consoles, and yeah, the resolution is lower, and the textures have been simplified down to practically nothing, and the overall lighting and shading needs an upgrade. But I must say, the overall performance was surprising. If it was anything like the Chapter 5 update in Battle Royale, I was feeling a little worried because that game mode did not run great for me on Switch. LEGO Fortnite runs a shockingly solid 30 frames per second with almost no dips or hitching. Woo! Yeah! I'm excited. It makes me excited. They did a great job optimizing this game for the underpowered Switch. I even tried to tank the performance in sandbox mode by adding dozens and dozens of animals and enemies, which I then discovered there was a limit. But still, this game performed great with all of this going on the screen. I think one of the best features about this whole game is the cross progression. Even though I am playing this on my Switch, I can still sit down on my PlayStation and pick up right where I left off in my own world. When tying your console accounts to an Epic account, all your Fortnite cosmetics, levels, and LEGO worlds can be played at any time and anywhere. It was a long road to get to the point that all the console manufacturers would allow this, but we're finally here. And if you want to learn more about that process and the entire rise and fall of Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch, check out my other video. So I did talk a lot about this game, but there's a lot to talk about. This isn't your typical LEGO story-driven game. It's a unique gem in the world of LEGO games, with an entirely new, intriguing gameplay style that is free to play, performs well on Switch, is integrated with all the cosmetics in your existing Fortnite account, is cross-progression, and it's a blast to play with your friends for long play sessions. Seriously, my friends and I played for hours just on the first day, and without a doubt there will be many updates in the future. So I have to put this in S tier, right? I have to. Probably my favorite LEGO game out of the bunch, and definitely the most fresh. Now that could also be because I played a bunch of the other games in a row, and it could also be because I like Fortnite, and I was excited for this one. Now if you're one of the people who don't count this as a LEGO game, the next in line for the best LEGO game in my opinion would be LEGO Jurassic World, so good job. Good job, everyone. But seriously, if you think that LEGO Fortnite is just LEGO Fortnite, it's not, and I really think you should try it out just to give it a chance. Now, with that out of the way, there's one honorable mention I'd like to make. The LEGO DLC in Sonic Superstars. This DLC felt kind of odd, but makes sense considering a huge line of Sonic LEGO sets had just come out. This DLC turns any of the main 4 playable characters into LEGO, and if you pre-ordered it, you had a code that would do the same to Eggman. There's also an online multiplayer stage entirely made of LEGO. Anyways, if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you want to support me, or even have your name at the end of this video, please check out my YouTube memberships program and Patreon. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. See you later.